Hi there, I am Wild Humphrey, and they call me the Fact Master because I'll tell you all those things you never knew you didn't know, and some that you do, and that's a fact. Now, here's a subject: US presidents. Well, they all started in 1789 when, on the 30th of April, George Washington was elected the first president of them all. He stood there and he said those 35 words: I do solemnly swear I shall faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. George was in office unopposed, didn't represent any political party, and never took a salary. He was the guy. Everyone respected him. He served 8 years before stepping down. He'd done wonders in the wars of independence. He couldn't stand the British, even though his family were actually from Essex. But nonetheless, he did a great job for the country. He was replaced by his Vice President, John Adams. And Adams, he had big shoes to fill, which he was never going to do. He only served one term. What he was famous for: he was the first president to move in, sleep and live in the White House, because it was during his presidency the White House opened. Washington, although he laid the first stone for the White House, he actually died 14th of December 1799, so I never got to see it complete. And the 1st of November 1800, John Adams moved in. Now, Adams was born on the 30th of October 1735, and his sworn enemy in politics was Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson was the third president, but there's a huge difference between these two men. The people loved Jefferson, something Adams would never be able to claim. Jefferson served 2 terms, and at the age of 33, he wrote, practically single-handedly, the Declaration of Independence, and the most famous paragraph: we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, Jefferson was 8 years younger than his enemy, Adams. Jefferson was born 13th of April 1743, but both men died on Independence Day. Now, they were both founding fathers. They both signed the Declaration of Independence 4th of July 1776, and exactly 50 years later, both of them died. Adams' last words were, Jefferson lives. He was wrong. Jefferson had died a few hours earlier, and that's a fact. President number 4. Well, President number 4 was a guy called James. And James didn't like the British at all. And James Madison, actually, his name, but he didn't like the British, so much so he declared war on Britain. And he declared war on the 18th of June 1812, and this would be the Second War of Independence, or War of 1812, as it would also become known. He was only 5'6", if that. So stature, very tiny, but big ideas. Started the war with Britain, and they actually did win the war, so what can you say? Number 5, James Monroe. Now, Monroe, no relation to Marilyn, famous for the Monroe Doctrine, and like his predecessor, served just 1 term. President number 6 was the first son of another president, and his name was John Quincy Adams. He was the son of John Adams, and there was a bit of controversy of when he was voted into office. There was a big hoo-ha about it. People thought something had, someone had been up to something. Nonetheless, like his father, he made no real impact on the country, and like his father, he served just 1 term. President number 7 was a man named Andrew Jackson, And Jackson was brutal, that's all I can say about him. He fought a gun duel and killed a guy called Charles Dickinson on the 30th of May 1806 before he became president. As president, he was the first president to face an assassination. Someone tried to shoot him twice. The gun didn't work. Jackson beat the guy to the ground. Jackson's men picked the gun up, pointed it to the sky and fired the bullet. Jackson was a lucky boy. He was the guy who was responsible for what's known as the Trail of Tears, because he did not like American Indians, and a lot of them suffered during that time. Anyone who got in Jackson's way, woe betide them. President number 8, Martin Van Buren, his name. He's the only president whose native tongue is not English. In fact, it was Dutch. He wasn't. He was a pussycat compared to Jackson and served just one term. Number 9 was William Henry Harrison. And William Henry Harrison stood in the pouring down rain on the 4th of March 1841, giving his big speech what he wasn't going to do for over 2 hours. On the 4th of April that same year, Harrison dropped dead of pneumonia to be replaced by John Tyler. And John Tyler was the first president never to be voted in, so he was not a favourite of the people at all. And at the end of the term, he was out. What was he famous for? He's the president with the most children. Him and his wife had 15 children, and that's a fact. Takes us to number 11, James K. Polk. Well, there are all kinds of different votes went on before Polk got into office. No one really knew who he was, and even the opposition said, who is James K. Polk? And that's a fact. One term, gone. Zachary Taylor stepped in as number 12, and he, like Harrison, didn't finish his term. He died in office. He took office 1849. On the 4th of March, stood there, gave his speech. 9th of July the following year, he was gone. So he couldn't do much. His replacement caused fury across the country. Millard Fillmore, well, he caused hell, and it was all to do with slavery. One term, he was gone. But what he started was 10 years later, big headache for the country. And he was succeeded by Franklin Pierce. And Franklin Pierce, as the 14th president, he spent a load of money. He spent over $10 million, and he bought Arizona and New Mexico, and he thought he'd done a good job. But at the end of his term, he couldn't believe it when he was voted out in favour of James Buchanan. Now, James Buchanan is the only president never to marry. He would have married, but his fiancée committed suicide just before he took up the office. Why? Because he'd been playing away and she was devastated. So he said, I will never marry. He felt so guilty about what he'd done. And that's a fact. Well, there's a quick run through of first 15 presidents. Oh, by the way, Buchanan didn't like the British, which was a shame because he was born on St. George's Day. All I'm telling you is from in here, and what I've done with what's in here, I've put it in here. Wild about facts. That's 15 presidents. The next one is a big one, and I'll be back to tell you all about it. That's a fact. In the meantime, take it easy. I'm Wild Humphrey, the Fact Master.